Imagine a burglar, just knocking on your front door wearing a police uniform, and they politely ask for your house keys.
Right.
And you'd probably just hand them over without a second thought, right?
Yeah.
Because, the uniform signals authority and
Yeah.
signals safety.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that is exactly how international spies are breaking into the most secure messaging apps on Earth right now. Welcome to Coding. This is your weekly cybersecurity podcast that covers the latest news and stories. Today, we are taking a close look at the invisible, interconnected supply chains of our digital lives.
It's a huge topic.
It really is, because when you think about your personal cybersecurity, you probably think about your password or maybe the firewall on your laptop. But the perimeter of cybersecurity is expanding in just wild, unprecedented ways.
Yeah.
From the physical hardware blinking in your living room to the third-party vendors handling your data in another country, the true perimeter is everywhere. And to help connect the dots on why these seemingly separate security incidents all point to a massive shift in how we need to protect ourselves, I am joined by our resident analytical guide. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Yeah, it is great to be here. We are really looking at a fundamental redefinition of what a network even is.
Right.
Because we used to build a digital castle wall around our data and just assume we were safe inside. But today, you don't just have to worry about the strength of your own walls. You have to worry about the security of the delivery driver, the plumber, and, the architect who all have keys to your castle.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And let's start with that burglar in the police uniform, because it really proves that the bad guys aren't always trying to smash the wall down with a battering ram.
Sometimes they just ask.
Right, sometimes they just ask you to open the door.
Yeah.
So we have this surprising warning that was just issued by the FBI and CISA. They are reporting that Russian intelligence services are actively targeting users of secure commercial messaging apps. We are talking about highly encrypted platforms, like Signal and WhatsApp.
Which, that immediately catches your attention, right?
Absolutely.
Because these platforms are built entirely around the premise of impenetrable end-to-end encryption. You use Signal specifically because you believe the math protecting your messages is unbreakable. The encryption protocols they use are open source, they're peer-reviewed, and mathematically sound.
Okay, let's unpack this. It's essentially like a burglar knocking on your front door wearing a police uniform and just asking for your house keys.
Right.
Because if the math is unbreakable, how are Russian intelligence actors getting in?
Well, they aren't.
Right. The answer is they aren't breaking the math at all. It's not some highly technical zero-day exploit that magically bypasses the encryption algorithm.
Yeah.
It is pure old-school social engineering. Hackers are basically masquerading as automated support accounts for these apps. They message users directly, pretending there's a security issue or a pending update, and they trick you into handing over verification codes, PINs, or they get you to click a link that pairs a rogue device to your account.
What's fascinating here is the psychological pivot. The attackers are completely ignoring the technological fortress of encryption, and instead they're targeting the human element. Specifically, the inherent trust we place in official-looking support channels.
Yeah, exactly.
They know that if an account named, Signal Security messages you with a red warning icon, your brain just temporarily suspends its critical thinking.
You panic.
Right, you panic. You want to fix the problem immediately, so you comply.
Exactly. And the mechanics of how this works are just terrifyingly simple, because apps like Signal, they allow you to link a desktop app to your phone by scanning a QR code or entering a PIN.
Which is a standard feature.
All right, it's super common. But if a hacker sends you a malicious link that initiates that pairing process in the background, and you approve it because you think, it's a security update, you've just invited them right into the vault.
And once they are in, the damage is absolute, because they aren't just reading your past messages. Since they've linked a device, they can see your contact list, they can send messages masquerading as you, and they can leverage your trusted identity to launch more phishing attacks on your network.
Wow.
Yeah, they are literally weaponizing your reputation.
And the scale of this operation is staggering. This isn't just a few isolated phishing attempts targeting grandmothers. Yeah. The FBI director, Kash Patel, noted that this specific effort has resulted in unauthorized access to thousands of individual accounts.
Thousands, that's huge.
Yeah, and we were talking about U.S. government officials, military personnel, journalists, high-value targets. And it's not just a U.S. problem either. The Dutch intelligence agency, the AIVD, recently flagged the exact same global campaign, warning their own dignitaries and civil servants.
It really highlights a critical vulnerability in how we perceive security. We assume that because the application is secure, the entire ecosystem around it is secure. But trust itself is the vulnerability. When you trust the platform so implicitly, you become highly susceptible to anyone pretending to speak on behalf of that platform.
Yeah, but weaponizing personal trust is really just the tip of the iceberg here. Because what happens when attackers weaponize corporate trust? Let's move from fake support agents to a real human support breach. I want to talk about the recent far-reaching breach at Crunchyroll, the anime streaming platform.
Oh, yeah. This is a classic supply chain attack, but focused on human services rather than software code. It is an incredibly common scenario in modern enterprise environments.
Right, so a threat actor infected the computer of a legitimate support agent. But here's the kicker. This agent didn't even work directly for Crunchyroll. They worked for a third-party business process outsourcing vendor called TELUS International.
Right, a BPO.
Yeah, and companies use these BPOs all the time to handle customer service at scale. So you think you are emailing Crunchyroll, but you are actually dealing with an outsourced contractor.
And because that third-party agent needs to do their job, they obviously have credentials, they have access to the internal systems. In this case, the malware gave the hacker 24-hour access to the agent's Okta single sign-on account.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and for anyone unfamiliar, Okta is an identity management service. It's designed so that employees only have to log in once to access a whole suite of corporate applications.
Wait, let me see if I can put an analogy to this. When we say single sign-on, we mean the agent logs in once and a digital token is generated. That token acts like a VIP wristband at a concert.
Exactly.
So the malware essentially stole that wristband, right?
Yep.
And it let the hacker walk past all the security guards into the various corporate applications without ever needing to know the agent's actual password.
That is a perfect analogy. Because they had that VIP wristband, the authentication protocols just assumed they were the legitimate user. And with that Okta access, the hacker walked right into Zendesk, which is the customer support platform Crunchyroll uses, and they just started scraping data.
And what a scrape it was. They pulled 8 million support tickets.
8 million.
That included 6.8 million unique email addresses, plus IP addresses and geographic data. The hacker actually demanded a $5 million ransom to delete the data, which Crunchyroll completely ignored, by the way.
Until them.
Yeah, and it is worth noting for anyone listening who uses the platform, your payment information was safe.
Well, unless you were foolish enough to actually paste your credit card number into a plain text support ticket, which please never do that.
Never do that. But look at the value of what was stolen. You might think, it's just support tickets. Who cares?
Right.
But if I'm a threat actor, and I know you use Crunchyroll, and I know your exact IP address, your geographic location, and the specific billing issue you emailed support about last month, I can craft a highly convincing, hyper-targeted spear phishing email.
That's scary.
I can send you a message that looks exactly like a follow-up from Crunchyroll support, and your chances of clicking that malicious link skyrocket because the context is just so accurate.
It really emphasizes that a company's security is only as strong as the laptop of its lowest-paid outsourced vendor.
Yeah.
But what happens when you outsource not just customer service, but the literal physical inventory of your business?
Right.
We saw this vulnerability explode in mid-December at a global auto giant, Mazda.
Right, the Mazda incident.
Yeah, hackers found traces of unauthorized access in a warehouse management system. And this wasn't even their main corporate network. This was a system used to operate facilities storing parts procured from Thailand.
It sounds like an insignificant node in a massive global supply chain. But, modern logistics require everything to be connected. That Thai warehouse system likely communicates with central inventory databases, which communicate with procurement systems. It's a digital bridge.
Exactly. And the hackers exploited system vulnerabilities in that specific Thai warehouse system, and they were able to access 692 employee and partner records, user IDs, names, email addresses.
Just 692.
Yeah, thankfully no customer data was stored there. But here's the funny part. If you can call anything in cybersecurity funny, no cybercriminal group has actually claimed responsibility for this attack yet.
And we can safely assume why. I mean, in the cybercrime underworld, reputation is everything. Bragging about a breach where you only managed to steal roughly 600 names and emails from an isolated warehouse database.
Right, it's embarrassing.
Yeah, that usually earns you ridicule on the dark web forums. It's seen as completely amateurish. They want millions of records, like the Crunchyroll breach, not a few hundred. Mazda actually got incredibly lucky that the system was segmented enough to prevent further lateral movement.
So what does this all mean? If a giant like Mazda can be compromised through a Thai warehouse system and Crunchyroll through an outsourced agent, how do businesses realistically lock down collaboration with outside vendors without grinding to a halt? You can't just stop talking to your suppliers or stop using customer service reps.
No, you can't.
But I have to push back here. A lot of security firms say the answer is to consolidate everything into one giant platform. We see this with tools like the Progress ShareFile platform, which is a factual case study of this trend.
Right.
But hold on. If you force all your vendors, all your files, and all your communications into one centralized all-in-one platform, aren't you just creating a massive single point of failure? I mean, if I move my trust from 5 different apps into one, aren't I just building a bigger target for the hackers?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it's easy to see why you would think that. It sounds exactly like putting all your eggs in one basket.
Right.
But the fundamental difference isn't just the centralization, it's the architecture beneath it. See, fragmented software is a massive liability because every seam between those apps, every time you download a file from an email and upload it to a chat app, that is a vulnerability. When you look at how a unified system like ShareFile operates, it's entirely built around a zero-trust architecture.
Okay, zero trust is a buzzword we hear all the time. What does it actually mean in the context of a vendor trying to do their job?
Zero trust means exactly what it sounds like. The system assumes everyone and everything is a potential threat, even if they are already inside the network. So instead of emailing attachments back and forth with a vendor, which is completely unmonitored and highly insecure, you bring the vendor into a tightly controlled, unified environment. You use secure client portals with role-based permissions and microsegmentation.
Meaning the vendor only gets access to the exact single folder they need to see and nothing else. They can't wander around the rest of the corporate network like that hacker did with the Crunchyroll agent's Okta wristband.
Precisely. You set expiration dates on links, you use digital watermarking. But most importantly, you have defensible audit trails. The system logs exactly who accessed what document from what IP address down to the second.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and this is critical for meeting strict federal and industry compliance standards. We're talking about HIPAA for protecting sensitive healthcare data, or FINR for auditing financial records, or SOC2 for general data security. A defensible audit trail provides mathematical proof of who touched what. The whole idea is that third-party collaboration has to happen in a meticulously monitored environment rather than the Wild West of sending files across fragmented software tools. You contain the risk by centralizing the visibility.
Okay, so it's like inviting a contractor into your house to fix the plumbing, but instead of giving them the master key to the whole house, you only unlock the bathroom door, and there's a security camera watching to make sure they don't even step a toe into the hallway.
That is exactly it. You are enabling the work to happen, but you are systematically removing unnecessary trust from the equation.
Of course, as businesses are trying to consolidate and secure their software environments, the attackers are not just sitting still. Centralizing defense means attackers are decentralizing their offense, and they are scaling up their operations by automating the creation of malware using artificial intelligence. We've got a fascinating report from security researchers at McAfee.
Ah, yes.
They have uncovered a sprawling cryptojacking campaign that is powered entirely by generative AI.
The use of AI in malware creation has been a theoretical threat for a while now. We've talked about it as a future problem, but we are now seeing it deployed effectively at an industrial scale.
And the scale is just wild. Hackers have distributed over 1,700 ZIP archives across legitimate platforms. Discord actually hosted the majority of these malicious URLs, but they were also found on SourceForge and file hosting sites like Mido Files. And what they're doing is disguising these ZIP files as nearly 50 different variants of fake software.
Right.
They're pretending to be AI image generators, voice-changing tools, video game mods, even fake VPNs.
Because they're targeting the exact tools that a highly online, tech-curious demographic is constantly searching for. If you want to try out a new AI voice changer for your gaming stream, you are primed to download a random ZIP file from a Discord server.
Right. And when you download this fake software, it drops a payload. Specifically, cryptojackers like XMRig. For those who might not know, a cryptojacker is a malicious program that secretly hijacks your computer's processing power to mine cryptocurrency for the attacker.
Without you ever knowing.
Exactly. In this case, they are mining privacy coins like Monero, Ravencoin, and Zephyr. These coins are specifically designed to be untraceable, hiding the sender, receiver, and the amount transferred. But here's where it gets really interesting. It's like an automated counterfeit money factory that doesn't just print fake bills, but actually writes its own instruction manuals to build more factories. Because researchers analyzed the malware code, and they found explanatory comments and structural patterns that strongly indicate it was written by large language models.
That is the terrifying part, and we really need to look at the mechanics of why AI makes this so dangerous. Because traditional antivirus software works largely by recognizing specific signatures. Think of it like a digital fingerprint.
Oh.
If the antivirus sees a file with a known fingerprint of a piece of malware, it blocks it. But what if the hacker uses an AI to constantly rewrite and restructure the underlying code of their malware while keeping the final payload exactly the same?
So the AI is changing the syntax, swapping out variable names, maybe adding dummy lines of code, so the program does the exact same thing, but it looks entirely different to the security software.
Exactly. This creates what's known as polymorphic code. It morphs. It changes its digital fingerprint so fast that traditional signature-based security solutions simply cannot keep up. The use of an LLM solves a massive logistical problem for hackers. Manually rewriting code to evade detection takes hours or even days.
But an AI can do it instantly.
Right, and AI can do it in milliseconds.
Yeah.
It allows them to diversify their attacks at an unprecedented scale.
And it's working. I mean, McAfee estimated that the hackers have already made over $13,500 just from the crypto wallets they could trace. Now, I can hear people listening thinking, wait, 13 grand? That's not exactly an Ocean's 11 casino heist. But why is that number actually significant?
Because it is pure automated passive income. Once the script is running, the hackers do absolutely nothing. They are making money silently in the background of thousands of computers. And the true cost is being pushed onto the victims. The victims are the ones paying the massive electricity bills to run the processors at 100% capacity, and they are the ones dealing with the degraded hardware performance. It is a highly efficient business model, subsidized entirely by the victims.
Man, so we've talked about human psychology being hacked on messaging apps. We've talked about third-party vendors leaving the back door open to corporate databases. We've talked about AI writing polymorphic code to evade antivirus software.
Yeah.
These are all software psychology and policy issues. But I want to shift our perspective entirely for a moment.
Okay.
Because every single byte of this data, every fake AI tool, every compromised support ticket, every encrypted message, it all has to flow through physical hardware.
The physical baseline infrastructure of the internet itself. We often forget about the physical layer.
Exactly. And the U.S. Federal Communications Commission, the FCC, has just made a monumental decision regarding that physical infrastructure. They have enacted a massive blanket ban on all new consumer-grade routers that are produced in foreign countries.
Yeah, this is huge.
Now, before we get into the weeds, it's really important to note for you listening that this move by the FCC is heavily intertwined with ongoing geopolitical tensions regarding trade and national security. Our goal today isn't to take a political stance on international trade policies, but simply to impartially unpack the technical cybersecurity reasoning the FCC is citing in these source documents.
And their technical reasoning represents a massive shift from securing software to securing the physical gateways of our networks.
It is a huge pivot. The FCC is citing recent, highly sophisticated cyber attacks linked to state-sponsored groups, specifically campaigns known as Volt, Flax, and Salt Typhoon. Because of these campaigns, they have officially labeled foreign-made routers a supply chain vulnerability and a severe cybersecurity risk. Now, to be clear for everyone listening, if you have a foreign-made router sitting in your living room right now, you are fine. The FCC isn't going to suddenly brick your device or turn off your Wi-Fi tomorrow. The ban applies to new routers seeking approval to hit the market.
But the implications for the future of the market are staggering. We have to look at what a hardware vulnerability actually means. A hardware backdoor isn't just a line of code you can delete. It could be a malicious microchip or fundamentally compromised firmware baked into the device, the factory.
Right, because if the router itself has a hardware-level backdoor built in by a state-sponsored actor, it doesn't matter how strong your Okta password is, or if you're using end-to-end encryption on Signal. The physical box that routes the traffic is compromised. It can theoretically intercept the data before the software even has a chance to encrypt it.
This raises an important question about the absolute limits of software security. What we are seeing here is the government acknowledging that software patches and firewalls simply aren't enough if the physical manufacturing process is compromised. But this ruling effectively upends the majority of the hardware market overnight.
It really does, because currently, an estimated 60% of U.S. home routers are made in China. Companies are either going to have to entirely overhaul their manufacturing pipelines to relocate to the U.S. or allied nations, or they're going to have to beg the FCC for conditional approval, which just sounds like a bureaucratic nightmare for these tech companies.
They are attempting to establish physical hardware sovereignty. In the cybersecurity world, we focus so heavily on the cloud and the code. We forget that the cloud is just a bunch of physical servers connected by physical cables passing through physical routers. The FCC is drawing a hard line, saying that if we don't control the physical manufacturing of these network choke points, we can never truly secure the digital traffic flowing through them.
It really is a fascinating pivot, and it brings us full circle on our journey today. We started by looking at how trust is manipulated at the human level, with intelligence actors tricking users into handing over their secure messaging accounts. We saw how trust in business partnerships can be weaponized, like an outsourced agent inadvertently exposing millions of Crunchyroll users, or a warehouse system exposing Mazda employees.
And we saw how hackers are no longer constrained by their own typing speed, using AI to generate sprawling, shape-shifting cryptojacking campaigns.
And finally, we saw how governments are reacting to all of this by literally banning the physical hardware that makes up the internet's supply chain. If there's an overarching lesson for you today, it's that modern cybersecurity isn't a single wall you can build and forget about. It's an incredibly complex, interconnected web. And in a web like that, trust, whether it's trusting a support text, trusting an outsourced vendor, or trusting the plastic box blinking in your hallway, trust is the ultimate vulnerability.
And I think there is a broader implication here as we look to the future. The FCC is trying to secure our networks by drawing physical geographic borders around where our hardware is manufactured. But as we just saw with the McAfee report, AI can spin up polymorphic malware in milliseconds from anywhere on the globe. It makes you wonder, if the government is banning physical hardware today because of state-sponsored threats, how long until we see regulations on the very code these large language models are allowed to output? Could we soon see physical borders placed on AI training data to stop polymorphic malware at the source? Are hardware bans actually going to keep us safe, or are we just trying to build a physical wall to protect against a digital cloud?
That is a phenomenal question to leave off on, regulating the source code of AI itself. Thank you so much for joining us on this exploration. We hope we helped illuminate some of the invisible threads holding our digital lives together. Until next time, stay curious and stay secure.